Okay, so we're looking at adding sound to compositions in After Effects. So we're dealing with audio and we're going to look at it in two ways. We're going to look at it first of all, we're going to look at how to add sound effects to existing animations, such as our crash. And that involves obviously having something already animated on screen and trying to time your sound to go with the movement. And then the other way we're going to look at it is through a sound bed. So we have
And the UN believes that some 5 million
an
Syrians.
audio bed here, and what we're going to do is we're going to find ways of timing the text up here to come in at the right moment based on the voice track down below. So we're kind of looking at it in two ways, each the reverse of the other, adding sound to visuals and adding and timing visuals to sound. So what I'll actually do is I'll start in this one rather than the sound effect one, just to walk through the ways that we can get from sound to visuals in the easiest, quickest way possible. Okay, so I'm just going to delete one or two things here to get going. Okay, so sound comes in like anything else. It's just a piece of footage. Drag it down onto the timeline and we can open it up and see what its properties are. So it doesn't have much in the line of transformations because it's not visible, you can't see it, so you can't move it around or scale it. But you do have a waveform and you have audio levels. Okay, so these are the two things that are kind of stuck to the clip before we start adding effects and presets and things like that. Okay, and we will be adding a very useful um, audio effect to our sound effects called stereo mix. We'll come to that in a moment. So what do? We have to find a way of being able to preview our audio, listen to it, find the important moments, label them in such a way that we can come back then, we can just go to our labels and we can place our visuals at those points. So there's a step involved in between moving our visuals and timing our visuals and hearing our sound, and that is the labeling process in After Effects, which is pretty straightforward. If you have a full keyboard, sometimes it's a little bit trickier, a little bit more clunky when you're working on a laptop. So just to talk through what we have here, we have a couple of layers here, separated, 5 million Syrian refugees, 2015. And all I'm going to do is I'm not going to create an animation, I'm just going to show how you can time the text to come in at the right moment. We also have this
And
kind
the
of,
UN believes.
just switch that off for a moment. And we also have another letter just going up and down. Now that's purely to illustrate when we're seeing our visuals being rendered, because we will have an option in After Effects to only preview our sound, and that's very helpful when we just need to hear the sound and we don't need to be rendering our full composition. Okay, and this is just to show you in a moment when we are and are not previewing our visuals and when we are just previewing our audio. Right, so I'll go back to the start. Now notice the waveform is gone. That's just because I've muted it. So when I unmute it, the waveform will come back. Now on a keyboard, the shortcuts are on the numeric side of the keyboard, so that's why it's easy on a full keyboard. Now if you're on a laptop and you need these shortcuts or you need to create any shortcuts, you can go to Edit Keyboard Shortcuts and you can assign shortcuts there. I'm not going to do that in this video. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be previewing the audio only, and you'll know that I'm previewing the audio only because I won't be seeing the O move up here. So I press the dot key on the numeric keypad in between 0 and enter,
And the UN believes that some.
and that allows me to preview only the sound. So notice that when the playhead is moving down here,
And the UN believes that some 5 million.
the O did not move. Now it went to where it needs to be at this point in the timeline, but it didn't render the movement. Okay, so I'm only previewing what's going on down here. So that's the first step. So I need to find the word or the words 5 million. So I preview, and then when I get there, I press the space bar. Okay, so I hit the dot key.
And the UN believes that some 5.
Okay, so there's 5 million. So I select my layer and I hit the asterisk key at the top of the numeric keypad, and that drops a marker. Now, I said labels earlier. I meant markers that you can label. Okay, so I'm going to put in 5 million. Click OK. Now, the next word I'm going to listen for is Syrian, so I hit the dot key again.
5 million Syrians could...
And same thing again, asterisk key, double click it, put in Syrian. That's actually Syrians plural, but we go with it. And next one is
Syrians could be refugees.
Refugees. Same thing again, asterisk, double click, refugees. And finally, we're just going to wait for
Refugees by 2015.
2015. Okay, now I can just get as close as I can get, and then I can move these around afterwards if I need to. Okay, so from here it can be a simple process of selecting the layer, going to the label, selecting the relevant layer, in this case 5 million, and then hitting Alt left square bracket, going to the next, now I say label, that's what I call them, the next marker or label, and select Syrian, Alt left bracket, then onto refugees and so on. So again, remember, this isn't an animation, it's just illustrating how we can time visuals. So now I'm going to hit the space bar and not the dot key because I want to preview everything. I want to preview the visuals coming in and the sound.
And the UN believes that some 5 million Syrians could be refugees by 2015. That's almost a quarter.
Okay, so those are the steps that you'll take. From there on in, you can be keyframing your animations, but you always have a kind of an anchor here in that you know exactly where the text needs to be at a particular moment in time. Okay, so that is timing animations to sound. Now we're going to go into the reverse and we're going to look at how we can create this. Okay, so I'm going to work with the crash animation, but I'm going to switch off and lock and hide everything else. So we can kind of start from scratch. Oop, can't select them if they're locked. Right. Sorry, should be selecting shy there now. Okay. Right, so I have smash somewhere. Smashing, there it is. Right, so I'll drag it down and open it up and look at my waveform. So this is kind of giving me a visual on something very important. First of all, it tells me that there's multiple smashing sounds. Okay. So I'm going to just use one, and I'm going to use the first one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the playhead to just where that waveform is about to start, and hit Alt left bracket, and then I'm going to go to the part where the waveform kind of starts to ease out there, and I'm going to hit the right square bracket. Okay, so this will give me, if I just hit the dot key and preview it, gives me one crash. Okay, now I need to time it. Now you can use markers here if you want, but you can see the actual point of impact. So sometimes it's easier. Now, what I will put it in there just to call it the crash point, just to be tidy. And I can drag that now and time it to the point where the crash happens. Now, if you wanted to go a little bit further with this, you might want to do a little bit of a fade out on the sound. And to do that, you just get your audio levels and you keyframe them like you keyframe anything else. And you bring the audio levels way down on the second keyframe. And it should give you a... So you'll see the waveform disappears there where the sound was faded out. Okay, so the last thing we can do now is actually look at the spatial aspect of the sound. So our text crashes into the right hand side of the screen, but the crashing sound currently comes out evenly on both speakers. So we don't have a panning property here that we can change, so we need to go into our effects and presets, and if you look for the word stereo, you'll get the stereo mixer. Drag it down onto your audio layer and you get left and right pan down here. So I'm going to put the left pan to 0 and keep the right pan at 100, which will give the effect. You can see it there, the left side is quieter, the right side is now louder. So now it crashes, the crashing sound comes out more on the right hand side. You can make that more pronounced if you want. And this will be very effective if you're doing kind of the swinging type of thing where you have a sound swooshing from left earphone to right earphone and so on and so forth. So you can play around with space visually, and now you can kind of play around with space sonically or aurally as well through effects like this. So that is pretty much it. That is adding sound to graphics and adding graphics to sound.